in love in the summer of 1973. Mitchel Fred Weiser, aged 16, and his 15-year-old girlfriend, Bonita Mara Bickwit, known as Bonnie to her friends and family, were a teenage couple from Brooklyn, New York. The pair had met at the John Dewey High School, a school for gifted young students, when Bonnie's friends and Mitchel's friends all formed one big friendship group. From here, it was said that Bonnie and Mitchel grew very close very quickly. They both came from loving Jewish families and lived in very nice areas of New York. Bonnie's family lived in Borough Park, whilst Mitchel's resided in the Midwood area. By the summer of 1973, the couple had been together for over a year, and even though they were still so young, they were deeply committed to one another, and had even exchanged wedding rings in secret that year. People that knew of the couple said that they would often refer to each other as husband and wife. In June of 1973, they had broken up from school for the summer and both had summer jobs. Mitchel was working as a photographer's assistant at the Chelsea booth on Coney Island, whilst Bonnie was away at Camp Wilmette in Narrowsburg, around 120 miles away, where she was working as a camp counsellor and a mother's helper. Being kids of the 70s, the pair desperately wanted to attend the most talked about festival that summer, Summer Jam. Summer Jam was considered to be one of the biggest music festivals around at that time, with over 600,000 people in attendance. It even received the Guinness Book of Records entry for the largest audience at a music festival. People gathered to watch some of the most popular bands of that time, such as the Allman Brothers and the Grateful Dead. Mitchel had purchased 2 tickets to go to the festival. He would be attending with his friend Larry. However, just 2 days before the festival was due to begin, Larry's mother had a bad feeling. Larry's mother got a bad feeling.
A really bad feeling about this, and it just stuck with her that she just was not going to let me go.
Being left with a spare ticket, Mitchel asked Bonnie to go with him instead. Working long day shifts, Bonnie felt as though she deserved the weekend off to attend the festival, promising to be back the following Monday. However, when she asked the family that she was working for if she could have a couple of nights off to attend the festival, her request was denied. Feeling exploited, Bonita got angry and quit her job.
She was in fact very unhappy at her job. Ultimately, I think she felt like she was being exploited, that she was working 16 hours a day, and he wouldn't give her the night off, and she quit and said, "I'm leaving."
She told her employer that she was leaving, but that she would be back at a later date to collect her paycheck. It seems that Bonnie's final straw had been when she was denied one weekend away to enjoy her summer. The only problem now that the teens faced was that they had no way of getting to Watkins Glen, where the Summer Jam Festival was due to be held. Watkins Glen was over 75 miles away from Camp Wilmette, and the only option they had was to hitchhike. Over the years, the dangers of hitchhiking has been very well documented. However, in the 1970s, an era that encouraged freedom and exploration, hitchhiking seemed like a relatively safe and efficient way of getting around, especially for young people who had no money and no means of their own transport but were set on travelling. When Mitchel's mother heard about the change of plan, with Mitchel no longer going with Larry and deciding to hitch his way to the festival, she too got a bad feeling and asked him not to go. Mitchel's sister Susan said that he was very stubborn and there was no way that he was not going to attend. One evening, a few days before the concert, Mitchel's mother was once again pleading with her son to reconsider. Realising that she was not going to change his mind, she turned to get her purse to give Mitchel money for transport so that he didn't have to catch a lift from a stranger. Unfortunately, it was at this point that Mitchel took the opportunity to run out of the house, where he boarded a bus to Narrowsburg, where he had planned to meet up with Bonnie at camp.
When my mother heard about the change of plans, she just didn't want him to go, and there was a lot of pleading from her for him not to go. She said, "Let me get you some more money," and he he ran out of the house. Mitchell.
From here, they had planned to travel to Watkins Glen together to attend the festival. Mitchell's sister said that he had left his home with just $25 in his back pocket. However, by the time he had reached Bonnie's camp 120 miles away, where he arrived at around midnight, he'd placed a phone call to Susan to tell her he had now used up all of his money. Upon hearing this, Susan urged Mitchell to return home if he didn't have the money to attend the festival, but once again, Mitchell didn't want to hear it. Before he hung up the phone, he told Susan that he would be back home the following Sunday night. Unfortunately, this would be the last time that Mitchell's family ever heard from him. In the week before the festival, Bonnie had been seen sneaking into her home by neighbours, presumably to collect the $80 in savings that she had been saving up to buy a new bicycle, before once again returning to camp. And so, the day of the festival soon rolled around. Saturday, July the 28th, 1973. Bonnie and Mitchell had awoken early that day to prepare for their trip. They had first been spotted in the camp's canteen hall where they had breakfast together. Bonnie was described as wearing a peasant blouse, a bandana and blue jeans, whilst Mitchell was wearing his trademark ponytail slicked back and had on dungarees and desert boots. They had with them a backpack, a sleeping bag that Bonnie had borrowed from a friend, and a cardboard sign she had made saying, "To Watkins Glen." They were last seen heading out of camp by fellow campers. A trucker was said to have picked up the two teens partway along the road, before eventually dropping them off along State Route 97. This driver remembered that as he drove away, he saw the two teenagers standing at the side of the road, still clutching the cardboard sign that read, "To Watkins Glen." This was the last sighting of Bonnie and Mitchell ever again. The following Sunday, Mitchell's family sat up all night waiting for him to arrive back home as planned, but he never walked through the door. Bonnie's parents, who had been away on vacation in Cape Cod, arrived home the following Tuesday to a phone call from Mitchell's family asking if Bonnie had yet arrived home. They were confused because as far as they knew, Bonnie was still at camp. It was then that Mitchell's family told them that she had quit a few days prior and had left to attend the festival with Mitchell, yet nobody had heard or seen from them since. Frantic with worry, Bonnie's family went to her summer camp in Narrowsburg, but when there was no trace of the teenagers there, they went straight to the local authorities to report the teens missing. The police, however, initially believed that the couple had run away from home together, and so the case was not taken seriously. Teen runaways were increasingly becoming more common throughout the 1970s. Young people were questioning the norm, and in their search for freedom, were rebelling against it. But they felt as though they would turn up again soon. Due to the case not being taken seriously in the first stages, and to strengthen the theory that they had run away, Bonnie's mother, Ray, received a letter written by Bonnie just 3 days before she had left for the concert.
I love you both very, very much. And it's for that reason that I'm able to write such an intense letter to you. Thanks. Thanks for being the people you are. Love always. Bonnie.
Both Bonnie and Mitchell's loved ones say that before they vanished, the pair did seem ill at ease. Bonnie was having problems with the family she was working for, and on top of this, her father, who she adored, was extremely ill. This apparently bothered her deeply, and she would often have crying fits. Mitchell was anxious that he wasn't going to be able to attend the prestigious college of his choice because his parents could no longer afford it, and so he had to choose one closer to home. Despite this, the families didn't think they had run away and were experiencing normal adolescent problems. Bonnie had also been in constant communication with her best friend Mitchel that summer, who was vacationing in Europe. They spoke of how excited they were to begin their senior year and were already making plans to meet up once Mitchel returned back home to Brooklyn. Mitchell was excited for his driving test, which was scheduled for just a few days after his disappearance. There were no red flags or cause for alarm that pointed to either of the two having intentions to run away and leave their lives behind. They were said to be outgoing, intelligent teenagers who were very popular amongst their friends, had loving families, and bright futures to look forward to. Since the 27th of July, 1973, the pair were not seen or heard from again. Family and friends have never forgotten about the two. Bonnie's mother has stayed in the same house since 1973 in hopes that Bonnie will one day return home, and Mitchell's family did later move to Arizona for health reasons, but kept a phone listing in the Brooklyn phone directory since 1973, just in case either of the pair wanted to get into contact. 13 years after adding this phone number, Mitchell's father, Sid, received a collect call from somebody identifying themselves as Bonnie.
My father got a phone call. An operator gets on the phone and says, "Hi, I have a collect call from Bonnie. Would you accept the charges?" And my father goes, yes, of course. And the operator comes back and says, "I'm sorry," she hung up. My father always felt that he shouldn't have acted so excited to hear from her, that she had lost her nerve.
As nice as it would be to believe that this was Bonnie, it seems more than likely that this was nothing more than just a cruel prank on a grieving family. The caller never phoned back and has never been identified. Mitchell's family held out hope that he may return on his 30th birthday. However, this day soon came and went, but still no word of Mitchell. Hope dwindled and the case lay dormant until 1998, when on the 25th anniversary of the concert, Eric Greenberg, a reporter for New York's Jewish Week newspaper, and who had grown up in the same community as the pair, remembered Bonnie and Mitchell's story, and began an investigation into the case. What he found was very disturbing. The Sullivan County Sheriff's Department, who were in charge of the case, were forced to admit that they had lost the original files, including all investigatory notes taken at the time. The only existing copy of Bonnie and Mitchell's dental records, which could have been used to identify their remains, should ever any be found, were also destroyed by mistake. This Sheriff's Department also admitted to failing to conduct interviews on crucial people involved, including Bonnie and Mitchell's friends and family, as well as individuals at the summer camp. When Eric published this article highlighting Bonnie and Mitchell's case, along with the nightmare of the investigation afterwards, it managed to capture someone's attention. This was of a psychic, a man called Maurice Schickler. Bonnie and Mitchell's families agreed to let Maurice help with the case. At this point, they felt they had nothing left to lose, and all leads were welcome in the case. Maurice first began by visiting Camp Wilmette. This led him to have visions about finding a rock quarry.
My information told me that I had to find a rock quarry. Also, the information said that there was a cemetery in the neighborhood or in the area of the quarry that I had to find. Also, two numbers came up. One was 23 and the other was 34.
Maurice claimed that as soon as he left the camp, whilst trying to conjure up more visions, he was driving down the road to notice that he was on none other than Route 23. After several hours of driving in no particular direction, Maurice claimed that he had reached the place that he was looking for. It was in this neighbouring town where he believed that the couple were murdered.
But this is the place, and I believe that the murder took place up on the hill. And there's a road that goes up this hill to the quarry off on the right side. Mitchell was murdered by a man who was a veteran, a Vietnam War veteran. The murderer grabbed him and put his hand over his nose and his mouth and squeezed his throat. He then murdered Bonnie in another location several days later, I believe.
He had believed that this ex-vet had come into contact with Bonnie and Mitchell, presumably took a liking to Bonnie and needed to get Mitchell out of the way, because it was obvious that he would have fought for her. He believed that Mitchell was overpowered, Being that he stood at just 5 foot 7 inches tall, and Bonnie too was very petite, standing at just 4 foot 11, they would have had no chance, especially if this person had been armed with a weapon. The only real lead that ever came out of this case was in the year 2000, when a witness came forward by the name of Alan Smith. Smith claimed that in 1973, at the age of 24 years old, he had been walking home from the Summer Jam Festival. He said that as he was walking down the road, a Volkswagen camper van pulled up beside him and offered him a lift. He gratefully accepted and climbed into the back, where he says he was met with a young teenage couple who matched the descriptions of both Bonnie and Mitchell. Smith was able to tell police that he overheard the couple talking about the girls' summer camp, and he was also able to accurately describe what the couple had been wearing when they were last seen. He said that along the way, the group had stopped off to cool down by a river. This had been a long drive, and being cooped up in the back of a van in the summer heat was not pleasant. Smith went on to claim that the girl in the group had gotten into some difficulty in the water, and she had begun to scream for help. He said that the boy who was with her had then jumped into the water to save her, but that they were both swept away, still screaming, as the current swept them down the river. The driver of the Volkswagen told Smith that he would call the police at the nearest gas station. However, authorities have no such record of any call ever being made. Police call Smith credible, but wonder why, as an athletic Navy veteran, he didn't attempt to save the drowning teenagers. He tried to justify his actions by saying that the water was too strong and that there was nothing more he could do to help. They investigated Smith's account, but there was no way to confirm or deny his story, as he couldn't remember the location of the river, and the driver of the Volkswagen bus has never been found. Digging a bit more into Smith's claims, more inconsistencies were found. During 1973 in New York, it was a scorching hot summer and there was a drought. This meant that the water levels would have been significantly lower than usual, and according to experts would have measured no higher than 5 feet deep at any given time. Even though Bonnie was only 4 foot 11, the current at that time would not have been strong enough to sweep away 2 teenagers. Also, if they had been swept away like Alan Smith claimed, then their bodies should or would have been washed up at some point. Many have remained skeptical about Alan Smith's claims and wonder whether his story had more sinister undertones. Some look at Alan Smith as a suspect who may have caused harm to Bonnie and Mitchell and wanted to offer up closure to their loved ones without actually incriminating himself. Maybe it was a horrible accident after all, and Alan Smith didn't want to get involved with the police. People have suspected that it was possible he could have been high on drugs at the time, and that's why he nor the driver reported anything to the police. Some have even speculated that Alan may have possibly offered drugs to Bonnie and Mitchell, leading them to have a bad turn, and because of this, he and the driver had covered up their deaths. Others believe that Alan Smith is making the whole scenario up, and there never was a camper van. They believe he may have come across the couple on his travels and did something bad to them. The authorities did look into Alan Smith's claims, however nothing more became of them. As of today, in March of 2022, Bonnie and Mitchell remain missing and their case remains unsolved. Their families have criticised the police for what they call a perfunctory investigation. This is now considered to be the oldest missing teens case in the United States history. A counter on a website made by one of Mitchell's friends in dedication of the pair is a haunting reminder that the couple have now been missing for over 48 years. In 2000, a reunion was held at the John Dewey High School, where Bonnie and Mitchell had been students. Classmates and loved ones gathered to plant a tree and place a plaque on the school grounds in remembrance of a promising young couple who set out one fateful day for a music festival and never came home. As of today, Mitchell would be 64 years old and Bonnie would be 63. On the screen now are age progression photographs of what they may look like if they were still alive. I really hope that one day this case is solved, and if Bonita and Mitchell sadly are no longer with us, then I hope their remains are finally brought home, and everyone involved can receive the closure they have long since been searching for.
If he's dead, he died in 1973. I owe it to him to find him and to find his killer. And that's what I want. If he's alive, then I want to find him. And I want to hug him, kiss him, and punch him out.